Hi, and welcome to my third lesson in the Starting Out with Sally series. I'm glad that you joined me. In the last one, I talked about the income statement and how it can be used to help your business, and I showed you the layouts provided in the report designer and explained how they work. We're now going to move on to the next important statement, which is the balance sheet. Whereas your income statement shows the financial position of your business over a certain period of time by comparing revenue and expenses, the balance sheet shows your financial position at a particular point in time by comparing what your business owns with what it owes. It is usually drawn up at the end of an accounting period. What you own are your assets and are the resources you use to run your business. What you owe is made up of your owner's equity and liabilities. Owner's equity is the money that's been invested by the shareholders in your company, and liabilities is that which you've borrowed to further support it. More specifically, the balance sheet seeks to balance the equation. Assets equals owner's equity plus liabilities. This is known as the accounting equation and is where the statement gets its name. The left-hand side must always equal the right-hand side, because in the double-entry accounting system, for every debit, there must be a credit. If it doesn't balance, then an investigation needs to be done as to why not. Another way of looking at the balance sheet is that it intends to show that all your assets are financed by the money that has either been invested or borrowed. Normally, your assets and liabilities are broken down into smaller accounts to help support the running of your business. However, two main classes exist: current and long-term. Current assets are those that have a lifespan of a year or less, meaning that they can be easily converted into cash within that time frame. Examples of them in my business are my cash, accounts receivable, and inventory. Long-term or non-current assets are those that are not intended to be or not easily turned into cash within a year. They can be further divided into tangible and intangible types. In my case, tangible assets would include the vehicles and machinery I use to transport my furniture. Examples of intangible types are patents and copyrights. Similar to assets, current liabilities are those that will become due or must be paid within a year, while long-term liabilities are debts and other obligations that are only due after a period of at least a year. Examples of current liabilities in Sally's necessities are my accounts payable, monthly rent for my warehouses, and income tax. Some examples of long-term liabilities are settlements on bonds and long-term loans. Owner's equity is usually broken down into your shareholder's equity and your retained earnings. To understand retained earnings, consider that at the end of each fiscal year, your income statement accounts like revenue, cost of sales, and expenses close, and what's left over after any dividends are paid to your shareholders is emptied into your retained earnings, which appears on your balance sheet. These funds can then be used to settle debts or reinvest in your business. Owner's equity is also referred to as your net assets, because it's equal to your total assets minus your total liabilities. Let's now take a look at a sample balance sheet to get an idea of what one looks like. Like the income statement, the one shown is a summarized version where the detailed accounts are not included. You can see from the title that it is recorded at a specific point in time. The three main sections of assets, liabilities, and equity are listed with their totals provided, and the assets and liabilities are broken down further into current and long-term items. Retained earnings is included under equity, and total equity is calculated by adding the two values together. Liabilities and total equity are then added together to form the right-hand side of the accounting equation. The important thing is that it matches the value of the assets. Now that we have an understanding of what a balance sheet looks like, let's take a look at the layouts provided in the report designer. In my last lesson, after running out the designer and generating the income statement, I saved the workbook to my desktop. Now, instead of running out the report from the report manager again, I'm going to open up the one that I saved. There's a few things to note here. One is that when the workbook was saved, the data it contained was saved with it, and so now will still be available for me to work from. A second is that if any changes were made to the financial information in my Sage accounting program since I saved the workbook, for example, if new transactions were posted, they will not be reflected in it. The workbook does not have a dynamic link to the program. To see the changes, I would need to run the report out again and, in so doing, extract the updated information from my database. The last point is that because I have saved the workbook on the computer I'm running intelligence reporting, all the report designer functionality is available. You can see that as it opens, the task pane loads, and the BI Tools options are available. If, however, I copied it to a machine that didn't have intelligence reporting installed or didn't have a designer license, the functionality would not work. You can see that my workbook has opened up just the way I left it, and we can now focus on the balance sheet layouts. I'm going to generate the first one from the task pane. In it, you'll find the same general structure as my income statements, with the same report headings at the top, the titles for my account rows below to the left, and my balance sheet data with the column headings to the right of them. The layout is summarized according to my account categories, with assets, liabilities, and equity included. Unlike the sample statement we just looked at, assets and liabilities are not broken down into current and long-term items. This is because they haven't been created as categories in my Sage accounting package. Retained earnings is reported on a separate line, and then total equity and total liabilities and equity are calculated. My account detail is also included, but is once again hidden. I haven't forgotten that I need to show you how to turn this on if you don't have it. I'll do so a little later. Taking a look at the columns, they show the closing balances for each reporting period through both the current year and the prior year. I discussed earlier that retained earnings is derived from your income statement, and it's useful to understand how it's calculated here. If I select one of the amounts, you'll see that it's using an Excel formula which is adding and subtracting values from a number of hidden rows higher up in the layout. If I unhide these rows, you can see that they include my revenue, cost of sales, and expense accounts. They are being used to calculate my closing net profit for each period. It's like having a mini income statement within my balance sheet. I'm now going to move on to the second balance sheet listed in my task pane. I'm not going to generate it or discuss it except to say that it is a cash movement balance sheet, which shows actual year-to-date figures for the current and prior years. If I'm not mistaken, it isn't included with any other Sage product. Once again, depending on the Sage accounting system you're using, there may be differences between your balance sheet and mine, and your layouts in general. Let's now take a look at how you can show your account detail in a layout if it isn't already there. All layouts in the Report Designer that are listed under the Task pane or Quick Generate menu have been created using the Layout Generator, and some settings for them can be found there. To access them, open the BI Tools tab and under Quick Edit, select the one whose settings you'd like to change. This will open it in the generator with the Layout Options tab shown. Unless you're feeling inquisitive, don't worry about any of the other details. The Layout Options tab includes the default values for your report headings and the ability to show or hide account detail. To have account detail included each time the layout is generated, make sure the option is checked. You can save your changes by clicking Save Layout near the bottom of the window. But if you do so now, you'll first be asked to enter the default report headings for it. After closing the message dialog, click on the magnifying glass next to each one and select the value you want. This is helpful because it means that now, each time the layout is generated, the values you have selected will be populated for the report headings and the corresponding data will immediately be shown. Once done, you can select Save Layout and then OK on the confirmation dialog. You can now generate the layout by either clicking Generate or by closing the window and selecting it from the Task pane or Quick Generate menu. I'm going to run it out again straight from here. You can see that the changes I've made are included. Note that these only apply to the layout I had just worked with. You'll need to repeat this for any others you want changed. An important thing to understand at this point is that if I save the workbook to my desktop and then open it again, my changes will still be there because they are saved as part of the file. However, if I close the workbook and run out a new instance of the designer, they wouldn't be included because they haven't been saved back to the report. Sage Intelligence provides a way to do this though, and I'm going to explain how it works. If you go back to the Report Manager and select the Designer report, under the Properties you'll see a field called Report Template with the name of an Excel file included there. This is an Excel template that is saved on your machine and forms part of the report's definition. When the report is run out, it is an instance of this workbook that is opened and which your raw data is placed into. Now, by updating this file, any changes you have made to your workbook will be saved to the report. This has a number of benefits. One is that you have the flexibility to customize existing layouts as you please. Another is that if you decide to create a report of your own, you only have to define the layouts in it once. Then, each time the report is run out, those layouts will be populated with the current data. In other words, you don't have to create something new from the data after each report run, which will save you a lot of time. One other thing to know is that because the template is a separate file, the same one can be assigned to more than one report at the same time. This may provide another level of convenience in some situations. To update a template, use the Save Excel Template button, which is found on the Home tab in the Report Manager. Before giving you a demonstration of it, I want to make a few more changes to my workbook to illustrate just how powerful this is. Let's say that in my report I want my balance sheet worksheet to be shown on its own without needing to generate it each time the report opens. I also want to change some of the formatting in it and include my company logo. The beauty of working in Excel is that I can use its standard functions, ones that I'm already familiar with, to do this. To include only the balance sheet, I'm going to go ahead and delete the other sheets. I'm going to leave the Home and Instructions one so that I have access to the links in them if I need them, but you can delete these as well if you want. I'm now going to insert some rows at the top to add a title to the layout. I'm going to use an Excel formula so that I can include my current year in it. I'm also going to increase the font size and change the color. To give the report heading some contrast, I'm going to set the format of the labels to bold. Lastly, to add my logo, I'm going to go to the Insert tab on the ribbon and click on Pictures. I can then search for the image, add it, and position and resize it if I need to. I'm now ready to save my edits back to the report. When doing this, you have to leave the workbook open. Then, in the Report Manager, select your report and click Save Excel Template. A dialog will appear listing all open Excel workbooks. Select the one that you want saved and then click OK. You'll be asked to enter a new name for the template. I'm going to give mine something more appropriate. Balance Sheet Current Year sounds just right. I can now click OK. The workbook will then be saved in a template format using the new name, and the report's existing file will be replaced. You can see the updated version in the Report Template field. If we go back to Excel now, you'll notice that the workbook has been closed. I now have a single designer report dedicated to my balance sheet in my Sally's Financials folder. In my last session, I'll show you how to rename it to something more suitable. Before finishing off, I'm going to run it out to show you that the changes I made are there. You can see it's exactly the way it was before I saved it. All the Report Designer functionality is still part of it, so that at this point I could generate other layouts or make other changes and then save them back if I wanted to. In this lesson, we looked at the balance sheet, the second important financial statement to do with your business financials. I discussed what it is, why it is important, and the information it contains, and I provided a sample one for you to see its general format. I then showed you the layout provided in my report designer so that you can get an idea of what to expect in yours. Once again, I encourage you to take a look at yours and become more familiar with it. I also showed you some extra functionality which included changing your layout options, personalizing your workbook, and saving those changes back to the report. And we saw the benefits that Sage Intelligence has in integrating with Microsoft Excel. I hope you're as excited as I am and see the power in using intelligence reporting. In my next lesson, we'll look at the last financial statement, which is the cash flow, and move on to the report that I imported using the report utility. Until then, goodbye.